Hello there, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, the internet, and the like, and welcome back to Team Fortress 2. Today, going to be playing on Payload Badwater as the soldier, using the default rocket launcher, the gunboats, and the market gardener. Today's topic is going to be a short discussion on a recent post made on the TF2 official blog called The Manco Factory Floor. First and foremost, the blog post has more confirmation that Valve has been indeed working on new weapons for an upcoming update. But there is something else that's worth discussing, which is the reveal of 4 scrapped concepts that Valve came up with, which they entitle our absolute worst weapon ideas from the past. First on the list is an item called the Big Bomb, and on paper, that sounds incredible. With this weapon, what's supposed to do is that it would replace the sticky bomb launcher with, well, an incredibly big bomb. I mean, there are, however, some problems that are worth discussing. They are pretty visible with this weapon. I mean, the big bomb, it would definitely slow down the pace of a game due to its very powerful explosion. While it's worth noting that while this weapon could only be used in one area, such as a payload choke point, for example, imagine if your entire team was composed of like demo men just running about placing these giant bombs in these small little doorways all over the map. They would cover every entrance or exit that the enemy team could use to flank you. An interesting note here, the blog mentions that during countless playtests, not a single player was actually killed by this weapon. Ironically enough, while people could absolutely despise fighting against this weapon, the player using it would not even get a chance to kill a handful of people. In short, this weapon is more brain dead than the sticky bomb launcher, but it leaves you at a very, very severe disadvantage of actually killing people. Next up, we have the face stab knife for the spy. Who in the world thought this was a good idea? I'm sorry, but the purpose of the spy is to catch people off guard with his selection of knives. That's the purpose of the backstab mechanic. If you took that spy's knife and made the backstab mechanic the complete opposite, fighting a spy, it would be the scariest experience ever. Think about it. There's just a spy running towards you, swinging at you like a butter knife. You would just get insta-killed by that, and that would probably be the most embarrassing thing that could happen to you in Team Fortress 2. I think what's funny is that the concept video that the blog provides for this idea is, well, imagine this. Quite literally, all you would need to do would get 3 spies on your team using this knife and a medic to heal them. And if the enemy team has like a single exit of their spawn, you had these 3 spies standing in front of this exit, which the enemy would not be able to see the other side of. The whole team would be trapped there forever. Who on earth is going to walk out of the spawn facing the completely opposite direction? And I know I certainly wouldn't. This isn't really worth discussing any further. It's just a dumb weapon. The third scrapped weapon concept is a weapon for the pyro called the Sucker. Now, if you're like me, and you just read this name without reading the rest of the blog, well, sort of like a normal person, then you might immediately think of this weapon as being the reskin for the fire axe called the Lollipop. But it's not that. It's definitely not that. This is a completely new concept, and if you think of this not as a melee weapon but as a primary weapon, what is the first thing that comes to mind? And if you didn't read the blog yet still, I encourage you to, first of all, and I'll fill you in anyways. The Sucker was intended to have people pulled steadily towards you on alt fire, as opposed to a one-shot air blast. When you take out the factor of having no air blast on this weapon, and trading it off for this idea, it seems like a fair trade at first glance. However, the idea of pulling enemies towards you not only sounds overpowered, but also kind of underpowered at the same time. I will try to keep at a middle ground here due to the controversy surrounding the Pyro and his weapons, so let's go over the downsides and the upsides. Now, unfortunately, I could not think of very many upsides for this weapon, but we'll go over them first anyway. The Sucker would be good for singling out targets such as medics. A good way to score combo, actually, it would be to use the sucking function to pull people towards you, light them on fire, and then switch to the extinguisher to land guaranteed critical hit. I'm not entirely sure how this could be balanced. Maybe the weapon switching time could be slowed down just a little bit. I don't really know. Sadly, this is where the upsides end. Now let's move on to the downsides. 1. The Pyro is already a relatively fast class. You wouldn't exactly need this weapon on any sort of flamethrower at all to just catch up to most classes because the flames, they already travel pretty far. 2. I'd imagine the idea of having enemies steadily gravitating towards you being a lot less disorienting than the air blast, and this could easily allow just about any enemy you capture to fight back if they find themselves being pulled in a certain direction. And 3, I don't think this mechanic could possibly compensate for the removal of the air blast function. The air blast function is just way too handy for it to be replaced. Plus, it is worth noting that while I mentioned on the second downside that a player trapped in this gravitation force would potentially have a chance to fight back, there were apparently too many problems with it in TF2's prediction system. It's sort of tough for me to explain the prediction system here in the commentary, so I'll go ahead and quote the blog here. One of the reasons why TF2 works and feels solid even on slower network connections is that every client is constantly predicting its own movement without having to talk to the server. Your player can move forward in real time on your screen, responding to your input the same way the server eventually will. Long story short, TF2 could not predict these suckers' mechanics, and it caused plenty of client-side problems. And lastly, we come down to undoubtedly my favorite concept called the base jumper. This item was supposed to be a parachute for the soldier's secondary slot, and it was actually released on the Steam Workshop some time ago. Link to the page will be in the description below. The blog doesn't exactly specify how this thing will work, and that's where things actually get pretty interesting. The blog states that the parachute would allow increased movement options against pyros and demo men, and this would be balanced by increased exposure when fighting heavies and snipers. That's the only statistic they revealed, and that's what makes this even more interesting. It's because at the end of the blog it reads, "Wait, this isn't a terrible idea at all." Okay, forget that last one. I think now it's pretty clear that Valve loves to tease its audience, and when you also consider that they did mention they had a lot of fun playtesting this, I think this might actually be in the game. This item could help rocket jumping beginners get a really good feel for using the Market Gardener, and in some possible unexplained fashion, makes fighting pyros and demos a bit easier. I'm definitely behind this idea, and it looks like Valve is as well, so perhaps we can expect this to be in the next major content update. And that about covers everything. So, now I turn to you guys. Do you have any thoughts about these weapon concepts? Of course, you're always free to write your own opinion in the comments section below. Please keep it clean and civil, and that about wraps everything up. So, thank you guys very much for watching. Have a great day or evening, and I guess I will see you in the next video.